Hey, it's Keri Glassman. And before we dive into the podcast today, I wanted to share something super fun with you. If you're feeling bloated, sluggish, or maybe just a little off, I've got something that's perfect for you. My 5-day cleanse is designed to help reduce inflammation, get rid of bloat, and simply reset your system without, of course, starving yourself or doing some crazy long intermittent fast or surviving on just juices. It's all about eating delicious, real, whole foods that nourish your body and leave you feeling clear, energized, and ready to take on the day versus dreading it. Plus, it sets you up with the structure for healthier eating long after the cleanse. No more going back to old habits. This is why I've been using this type of cleanse with my clients for over 2 decades, and I've put a version of it in all of my books because it's a reset that works as a framework for eating going forward. Midlife doesn't have to feel like a drag, so let's hit reset together. This is the first time I'm doing this as a community, and I cannot wait. Head to nutritiouslife.com/5-day-cleanse/. That's nutritiouslife.com/5-day-cleanse/. I'll also put that link in the show notes. We start on May 5th. I cannot wait, and you've got this. Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Are you ready to take control of your health as you move through midlife? Well, hello, my perimenopausal and menopausal friends. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm your host, Keri Glassman, and I've got a very special midlife episode just for you. For today's episode of Living a Nutritious Life, I sat down with bestselling author and journalist Tamsen Fadal to break down everything you need to know about perimenopause and menopause. We talked symptoms like brain fog and weight gain. We talked about hormone therapy. We talked about how to talk to your MD about this stage of life and how to find the right MD. Tamsen is all about empowering women during this time of life, and I'm so excited to share her knowledge and her actionable tips with you to help you through this time and to help protect your long-term health. Whether you're experiencing symptoms, you're curious about hormone therapy, or you just want to feel your best, this episode is packed with advice to help you live your most vibrant, nutritious life. So do not miss it. Let's do this. And again, if you love this episode, please rate, review, and share. Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Welcome to the Living a Nutritious Life podcast, Tamsen. I am so excited to be talking with you today.
You and me both.
I'm so excited. Long overdue. And congrats on How-to Menopause, a New York Times bestseller.
Thank you.
I am not surprised because I dove into this book and I just was, I couldn't put it down. It was like,
Oh, you're so sweet.
no, really.
You.
And that's not always the case when it comes to these types of books. I mean,
Right.
sometimes when you're reading fiction, you got to know what happens, but sometimes, and these are, and this is my thing. I mean, these are the types of books I read, but still, sometimes you got to be a little more awake. You got this one. I just could not put down.
Or someone that puts you to sleep every night, right?
Exactly. But
you.
I'm just so, because, I think for many reasons, this is exactly what I'm personally dealing with in my life. This is exactly what so many of these listeners of this podcast and so many people in my community are dealing with in life. But also, I think we're also on the same page with so many things. So it was nice to just like read some of that, be like, yes, me too. Yes. Yes. I felt like I was saying that as I was reading, but also the way you write, it's so readable. And
thank you.
I like to read things like this this is how I actually like to educate, again, people that are listening here, as well as people in my community and clients. I like to give information that's understandable and actionable. So you can take action and make a change at that moment, feel better. And so I really feel like you do. I just really have to applaud you for that right off the bat, because
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you do such a great job with that.
I had a good time with this book. I'll tell you. I did say to everybody though, when I was writing, I'm like, I had brain fog during a lot of the writing, because the writing took place in the last few years, and I said I have to make it brain fog proof for these women and for myself, because it's so it's really important to be able to read it. And I didn't want something so dense, and I'm not a doctor, so I had a comfortable place of being a journalist, but it felt really good to be able to write something that I could like drill down, because I think we need that during this time. Like, I want to know what to do. Like, don't tell me all the problems, just tell me what to do. And so that's what I look for in a book. So I really appreciate you saying that. It means a lot.
Yeah, well, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. So, but speaking of brain fog, let's just, for people that haven't read the book or haven't heard your story yet, let's talk about how you were inspired to even write this book, where it came from, and when I say brain fog, I think the story I'm thinking of. I want people to hear like your experience. So, can you share that with us?
Yeah, of course. So I was a journalist before all this for years and years, and I worked in New York City. And I would anchor the news at night, and I would do like 4 hours. I would do from like 4 to 7 and then 10 to 11. And I had been having a problem over the course of the last few months, or prior to this, like maybe 6 months even. And I would look at a word on the teleprompter, because we'd read the teleprompter, you read it for about an hour. And I'd look at a word that I knew, and I knew it, but I couldn't get it out of my mouth, and I'd have to just skip it. So if you were really listening closely, you'd be like, did she? Well, I don't know. Maybe I misheard her. But that was happening over and over. And so I would start to get on the anchor desk to do the news, and I couldn't wait to get off and just like, thank goodness that show went okay, or okay, that wasn't that bad. And then this one particular night was November, and it was 2019. Everything in my life is like before pandemic or after pandemic.
Right.
But it was 2019, and I had that problem early on in the newscast, and didn't, I was like, oh, another night of this, and didn't have the word brain fog, because I didn't even know that's what it was at that point. I just thought like something's going on. Maybe it's stress. Maybe it's like, I hope I don't have something wrong with my brain, but it doesn't happen all the time. So maybe I don't. And I got this intense hot flash, which I, again, didn't know was a hot flash, that came kind of erupted from the inside. And if you ever had a bad hot flash, or you feel like you've got a fever, like sweat can break out, like everybody has different levels of intensity. And this one was really bad. And I could feel my heart like racing, and I thought, I'm going to pass out. So I got off the anchor desk, during the commercial break, went to the bathroom, and just laid down on the floor to kind of calm my whole body down. Coworkers came in. They're like, are you okay? Like men, like one of the guys had walked me in there. So it was the first time I'd not finished a newscast. And I wound up going to my GP after that, like the following week or two, and going like, this happened. I don't know what it was. And then I talked to my therapist about it. They're like, is it stress? Here's some Lexapro. I got Lexapro.
Right.
I got Lexapro.
A typical go-to at this stage of life is what happens is women get put on Lexapro.
They thought it was anxiety.
So, yeah, exactly. So common. So
common.
Like,
maybe you're anxious. You've been through a divorce in this past 10 years, been through this, been through that, new relationship. Like they had I gave them my list of problems and they gave me, and so back my answer. Never once did anybody say perimenopause. And also I will say during this time leading up to this, like in the past 2-3 years before, I'd had crazy periods, like for a month. I'd have a month of bleeding and then nothing. And then another month of bleeding and then nothing. And so finally I got a note in my patient portal and it had 4 words in it. It said, "In menopause, any questions?" from my,
like what? Any questions? I mean, like, what do you want me to do?
It was a different time. I mean, now it's early 2020. And
I'm just going to drop this in your email like a bomb and not.
Yeah. And it was an emotional thing too. Like I had already made the decision that I wasn't having children, but because I'm being told that I can't,
of course,
it's not possible, then all these other emotions came up that I was like, what is this? What is going on? I was with my husband. I'm like, I'm in menopause. Like, I'm too young for this. And I was 49, which is the average age, and I was like, and I can't have children. And he goes, but didn't we decide that? I'm like, but now I officially can't. And he's like, oh my God, what is wrong with this girl? So anyway, so that's when I started understanding that that's where I was. And then I started doing a deep dive to figure out what to do to start feeling better. I had no idea. I didn't know that any of those things were all part of this. Like I didn't know symptoms. I knew hot flashes. That's all I knew. That's all.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the symptoms though, because, well, first of all, I'm with you. I would say one of my biggest symptoms of perimenopause is brain fog and word recall, which is, part of brain fog. And I think at least 3-4 times a week, I say, okay, what's that big word I'm thinking of? Oh, house. And I'm like, perimenopause. And I do that all the time, but it really happens. But at least knowing what it is helpful.
Now you know, and you're not like, is it dementia?
Exactly. So that does reduce the anxiety about it a little bit. But but I think it's really important to talk about the symptoms because there are so many symptoms. It's not just hot flashes. It's not just, those, the things that people typically think of, right? Like there are so many different symptoms. And the other thing about symptoms that I think is really important for people to understand, which is why I want to talk about them a little bit, is that your symptoms are also an indicator of your risk for health in the future. And I think sometimes people, if they do know what they are and they do know I'm having hot flashes, they think to themselves, I should power through this. Or they're told by their doctors, you just kind of got to power through it. You'll get through it. Every woman gets through it. And they don't realize that
all part of age.
that their severity of hot flashes relates to their risk factor for cardiovascular health. And so I think it's also really important to look at your symptoms, not just as how much I can handle them, but it's what can I do about them to not only feel better now, but to protect myself for the future. So let's talk about that brain fog, word recall. Obviously, we just talked a little bit about that. Hot flashes, talked about that, but not everyone I don't have hot flashes, but I certainly have the word recall. So that's it. Everybody has their own kind of mixed bag of symptoms as well. So let's talk about some more, because you list a whole bunch of them in the book, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about them because, again, I think some of them are surprising to women.
Yeah. Well, one of the ones that is super irritating is obviously the physical, which is belly fat, and that is not uncommon at all. Night sweats, sleep disruption, heavy periods, irregular periods, not even heavy, but irregular periods, which often are heavy. Allergies can come up during this time. When we talk about mood swings or different kind of changes in mood, we talk about anything ranging from anxiety to rage. And so I do feel like these symptoms, and I do want to say this, word recall is one in brain fog, but it can also be like, why did I walk into this room? Or, or I can't remember somebody's name, or I'm seeing a word and I can't recognize the word. And where did it go? So brain fog comes in a lot of different forms.
Absolutely.
But have some of this vocabulary before to identify it. So I do feel good about that part, that is becoming a little more clear in the conversation. But I do feel like we have so much work to do to let women know, because we have estrogen receptors all over our body.
Right.
So everything is impacted by this. We did a documentary and we talked about teeth being impacted by this. I talked to somebody the other day who's studying to be an eye doctor, and he was like, guys are not exempt from
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
we do have those estrogen receptors. We have a lot more research to do, a lot more work to do. But, if you are in this age range, which we know that, menopause on average for a woman in the US is roughly around 51 years old. And you say that perimenopause, which is any of this time beforehand, could be up to, 4, 7 to 10 years beforehand. It's very likely in your late 30s, early 40s, you could be experiencing some of these symptoms, which simply mean a fluctuation of hormones, but to be aware of them so you know what's going on long term. And I do think that once women feel more aware and they do, like you said, they know what's going on and they're not like automatically rushing to like, is it dementia? Is it because I didn't work out hard enough and I'm not eating right? Is it because, and we can say, hey, maybe it's perimenopause. And now what are some of the possible solutions for me then? So I'm hopeful
Absolutely.
this
Yeah.
conversation helps that awareness for long-term health too, obviously.
Right. And also, like I said, it just can like even reduce some of the anxiety around it about what is going
100.
on with me. I mean, even a couple other symptoms, even body odor and skin changing, like estrogen affects our skin quality, which is why,
100%.
even for some women, it's like starting to take collagen earlier or at least thinking about how much protein you're consuming so you
Yep.
have less muscle loss, right? Like there's so many things you can do to be proactive to, again, not just feel better in the moment, but protect yourself in the future. It's funny, actually. So this morning I was on a group text with a couple of my college besties, and I'm 52, so we're all, same age. And I said, by the way, I'm interviewing Tamsen Fadal in a few minutes. Do you have any questions?
Oh,
And
great.
they said, no. And so, well, one of them asked a question I'm going to ask later, so I'll save
Yeah.
that one. But one of them said, still get my period every month. No menopause questions for me. And I said, oh, no, that is exactly why you need to read this
Yeah.
book. I
Yeah.
said, it's not about when you just stop getting your
No.
period. I said, we've got to talk. So I said, we need to talk and you need to read this book.
Yes. Oh, you're so sweet. But
Yeah.
you're so right about that, because I wish that I had known. Here's what I wish I had known. I wish I had known that I was going into my 40s and I was going to see these changes, whether
Yes.
it's in my body or my period or my thought process, whatever it was, and could have said, I know what this is. I know what I'm going into. And now what am I going to do to tee myself up for the best, time possible versus, oh my gosh, note in my portal that says this is where you are. Everything during this time was that. And wow, you could have not suffered during that time. And I think that we as women are so used to suffering that we think like, well, if it's not that bad, then I can deal with it. And unfortunately, the truth is that we shouldn't be suffering during this time at all.
Yeah,
There are
absolutely.
actual solutions. There are actual solutions for it. And to know about it so we know what we're dealing with long term with risk of bone, heart, and health. So bone, heart, and brain is really, really important. Like when you look at the percentage of women to men that, develop Alzheimer's down the road, or you look at the percentage of women that die from a cardiac incident, that it is really scary and something we need to be aware of.
Yeah, or breaking a hip. We know that
Or
most people,
breaking a
when you
hip.
break a hip, I
Yep.
mean that we know that mortality goes up within the next 6 months.
Yep.
So that is a huge, and we know that when estrogen goes down, you're at a greater risk for osteoporosis. So you really have to protect yourself. So we're going to get into hormone therapy, so I don't want to go too far down that road at the moment, but that is a big reason to be aware of all of these things. And so what you do now, again, is protecting you for the future. So you're absolutely right. It's so important for people to have this information before they're experiencing it. And it makes me think too, it's like when we're in school, right? In what
Yeah.
grade? 6th grade, 7th grade,
Yeah.
you learn about your menstrual cycle. You
Coach.
learn about pregnancy, but we don't learn anything about this. So
Yep.
and I'll say, even if you go into medicine, you don't learn much about this at all, which I know you actually do a great job in your book also talking about that. You asked doctors like what they learned in medical school about this time of life, and it was very, very little. We can get more into that, but I think unless you go into that, you never learn this. And on top of that, I think what also is so frustrating, I think I'm thinking of all these women that like have been lacking this information, which is why I'm so happy with the work you're doing, is that we're also taught, not only do we not learn it, but we're kind of taught to not talk about it.
Oh,
right? I mean,
100%.
who talks about it? It's sort of like, you know what I
100%.
mean? You don't want to talk, you're not, and a lot of people don't want to, they don't talk about it with their friends. I mean, now I think women are talking about it more and more. And of course, the
Sure.
first place you talk about it is really like your girlfriends, but you're
Yep.
not, most people aren't talking to their partners about it. You're not
No.
talking to your colleagues about it at work. Oh, by the way, I'm having a hot flash. I need to leave this meeting. Like you don't, it's not a common conversation.
No, my husband said I have created it as a new dinner party conversation when we go out now, but that's just the way it is. He's like, "Do you bring it up, or do people bring it up to you?" And I was like, "It's a combination of both, because women feel free to be able to talk about it." And I think that that's just an amazing thing. So he's always kind of humored by the fact that, like, people used to be like, what's the biggest, most exciting interview you've ever done? Now they're like, "Listen, I got to talk to you about my period. Like it is
Yeah.
coming
Yeah.
up, so, so
I
I'm so
know
happy about
it's
that.
it is so good that it's becoming more of a normal conversation
Yeah.
like that. And I
Yeah.
think it's important to have those conversations and not say, "Okay, guys, close your ears."
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to hear
Yes.
about
Oh,
this.
no,
Because
no,
I
no.
think that's also common, like sitting there at dinner, talking with girlfriends, maybe say, "Okay, you guys don't want to hear about this." Or
Yeah,
just,
you
and to make it a big part of the conversation.
agree.
I mean, the amount of times, I mean, that my boyfriend will say, "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood?" And I'm like, "You need to read this book," or you need to listen to this episode of this
Yep,
podcast I did on
yep,
perimenopause, because
yep,
it's called rage.
yep.
It's called irritability. It happens.
And it does.
So, but
It
I think
does.
like men do need to be aware of all of this anyway. But it's good. And I again, I love that you're doing this work so that,
Thank you.
the conversation is
Thank you.
becoming so much more of the norm. But I do think too, we need to also teach our kids about it, and we need to, and it should, hopefully it'll be taught more. Even I have to say,
Oh,
when
gosh.
when I got my master's in clinical nutrition in the late 90s, we learned, nutrition in the life cycle. I mean, and there was teeny little bit on menopause, and
Yeah.
barely anything.
Yeah.
The 98% of what I've learned on my own after school.
Well, but I think that, that's why I want women to feel confident about this, because I don't want them to think they don't have information and they can't help make decisions. And I think that in a lot of parts of medicine, we feel that way. In this part of medicine, you could be quite as up to date, if not more, than your doctor, because they did not
Absolutely.
learn a lot in medical school. To their own admission, a lot of doctors are, working really hard right now to play catch up with that, because they just weren't taught, and it's not their fault. And
Exactly.
so and then there's some tremendous doctors out there that have been studying this for a long time and have been paying attention to it, but that's not traditionally what they were taught, and especially the different disciplines.
Hmm.
Even if we're just talking about OBGYN, but I'm saying even the other
Yeah.
disciplines that have not been taught this. I had a documentary screening the other night, because we did a documentary called The M Factor: Shredding the Silence on Menopause in October. And there was a guy there, and I noticed he was like really quiet. He was alone, and he's a medical student. And he said, "Hey, I want to bring this to my university and my school. But because of the field that I'm going into," he wasn't even going into OBGYN, but
Hmm.
I thought that was just really spectacular. So that the word is getting out. And so we're going to see doctors
Absolutely.
that are more aware of all this, but it's going to take some time. So I just would encourage all of your listeners to know that, like, you can take charge of this, have the information in your
Yeah.
hand, go to your doctor. If they are not willing to talk about it, you got to find another doctor. If they are willing to talk about it, just know that you can arm yourself with just as much information, if not more.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I always tell people is, I don't care if you go to your endocrinologist,
Yeah.
your your
Yeah.
OBGYN,
Yeah.
your GP, they
Yeah.
just have to be an expert in hormones. They
Yep.
have to be an expert in this
100%.
area. So regardless, it doesn't really matter. They say, "Well, what type of doctor do I go to?" I said,
Yep.
someone who's an expert in
Yep.
hormones and hormone therapy, if that's something
Yep.
you're interested in. And you should absolutely be interested enough to at least know it's not for everyone, but it
Yep.
is for a large majority of women. And you at least have to have the conversation and make
Yep.
an intentional decision about it. So on that note, actually, let's talk about
Yep.
hormone therapy.
Yep.
So when women ask me, about hormone therapy, and they say, "Well, what do you think?" Isn't that, some people have still not gotten over the women's health study that from,
Mhm.
20 plus years
Mhm.
ago,
Mhm.
that I know you get really into that in the book, and I'll let you talk about that. But I think some people are still from that mindset. They haven't caught up yet, and they still think, "Oh, no, I can't do that. We're not supposed to take them." And then
Mhm.
other people are aware, saying, "I know a lot of people are taking hormones now, but I don't really know. Am I supposed to? Am I not supposed
Yep.
to?" And I
Yep.
always say, listen, what I think is, I think it's great for many, many women out there. I think it is the right decision for, I would
Mhm.
say even a large majority of, of, of women out there. That does not mean that it is right for everyone. And it also doesn't mean that there's a one size fits all solution. It is very, like everything in medicine, it is very personalized. And so you really have to go to, back to what we were just saying, a doctor that knows exactly what they're doing. So, but I do want to dive into, because you do a great job in this chapter of your book going through, the people who, are at risk for possibly, not going on hormone therapy, the people it's more right for. But one thing you say in the book is, you say, women who started hormone therapy before the age of 60 had a 39% lower risk of death than women who didn't take them. And this was according to the pooled statistical analysis of 30 clinical trials. And I think just that statistic for so many women is going to be just really mind-blowing and eye-opening.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about that and some of the doctors that you talked to about that?
Yeah. I think, the most important part to understand is it's the impact of, what estrogen has in our body and how it just kind of is here and then it's here. It plummets. It goes from, you're ticking along just fine to gone in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like estrogen and progesterone, testosterone, we're talking about all the hormones.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I came across those numbers, I was like, oh my gosh, is that
Right.
even possible? But when you think about what estrogen does in terms of supplementing in brain health, in bone health, in heart health, in
Mm-hmm.
those different areas that we're talking about, because what happens is without estrogen, your whole body kind of is, it dries up a little bit.
Yeah.
And that includes heart muscles. That includes what's going on in your head. Dr. Lisa Mosconi does a great job of explaining in the book exactly where those estrogen receptors are when it comes to like brain health. And so when I came across that, I was like, oh, this book is not for, and this has kind of changed my understanding of how to write it too. This book is not for, oh gosh, I'm not dealing with any of those things yet, so I don't have to worry about them. This book is for, hey, what goes on during this period in time and how can I reclaim that part of my life and make sure that I'm healthy long term? So it's not about, okay, I can live with the hot flashes and I can live with the night sweats. It's not
Exactly.
bad. It's that, hey, I'd like to preserve my heart health. I'd like to make sure, to your point, that I don't break my hip because osteoporosis and
Mm-hmm.
the numbers are off the chart, at these ages. Hey, I would like to make sure that, I take care of my brain and brain health. And there's so many more studies going on with that right now, like currently in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
that I kept adding things to the book up until the last minute because there's so much new research out there
Mm-hmm.
that needs to be done. But I do want to say, I don't want that to discourage women that cannot do estrogen or do
Mm-hmm.
have a history of breast cancer or not able, or have, that's off the table for them, because there are other ways to work around that, and to say that lifestyle changes can be made and can be implemented and can be very helpful. And
Yeah.
we should be doing those regardless, whether you're on on hormone therapy or not.
Yeah, it's such a good point, because it's true. There are women that it is not right for, and that doesn't mean that you just have to say, there's nothing I can do. I'm at risk for all
Yeah.
these things. There are so many other things that you can do. But
Yeah.
again, it's also why you have to, be informed. And I love it that you said that about Dr. Mosconi's work too, because again, the estrogen receptors in the brain. I mean, it's one thing, like, people often, I think, first start to think about perimenopause and menopause coming up, because a lot of them, it comes because they're gaining weight. Like, I'm gaining weight in my midsection, and I know my hormones are out of whack. That's right. Isn't that just what happens? And they
Yep.
really focus on the weight gain first, maybe wrinkles. And I say, listen, like, I don't want to gain weight. I'm like with everyone else. I absolutely, and I don't want to gain weight during this time of life. However, and weight bothers me just as much as the next person. However, my main focus here in terms of preserving my health right now, for feeling better now and looking towards the future, it's
Mhm.
not about extra 5 pounds around my midsection.
No.
When I'm 70, it's about my brain. And that's why I'm so focused on this area.
Mhm.
And that's one of the major benefits of hormone therapy. So
Yeah. And
anyway,
it's never too early to start all of these other changes. Like,
right.
these aren't like, oh, well, when I'm 40, I'll
Yeah.
start paying attention to protein. When I'm 45, I'll start, when I start having the problem, because that's where I feel like and a lot of women got cheated. I
Yep.
thought like, I can cruise along without sleep and, cheat the meals a little bit and not pay attention and not even know the word stress management. And so when I wrote this, I kept adding these chapters, like I think it's almost a third of the book that goes beyond where you hit menopause. So it was, it's for perimenopause, menopause, and then what we refer to as postmenopause, but really it's all these other years that happen after you stop getting your period for 12 months. Doesn't mean you're through menopause. You're always in menopause. And I was talking to a woman yesterday. She's 75. She still gets hot flashes, but nobody ever offered her hormone therapy ever.
Right.
So I was like, I need to talk to you about, this, so you're aware. So I do think that this was important for me to like encapsulate all of that, and then also talking about the incredible part of what happens, because
we're going to get to that too. I want to talk to you about, because I love your attitude about sort of this next stage of life. I really love your attitude there. So I definitely want to dive into that. I want to go back to one thing you just said about the, eating protein. And I should have thought about these things when I was younger. And, one thing when people do ask me, again, being the dietitian nutritionist that I am, people do ask me about weight gain during this time. And it's something I do talk a lot about. And
you get those questions.
And our sleep and our stress management. And because these are all, pillars of a nutritious life. But what I say for the most part is, and this to me, it's so simple, but to me, it's the most important thing is what we should do now during this stage of life, perimenopause, into, for the future,
for the forever.
Years, for the forever, is really double down on all of the things that we should have been doing since we were in our 20s.
I know.
Managing our stress, eating those whole real foods, getting adequate sleep. So there's really nothing, it's not like there's some new miracle food. Yes, our green vegetables are really important to us during this stage of life, but they were always important to us and we should have been doing that always. So it's just the difference is that now if we don't do it, we're not going to get away with maybe, gaining 5 pounds on vacation and then losing it, or we're not going to get away with not, getting sick, or or it's going to have more detrimental effects in the future if we don't do it now. So we really have to, again, I always just use that expression, like double down, focus in on all of those things we always should have been doing. But, so I do think another reason why it's so important for women to be empowered with this information when they're younger. So they are more prepared, like you said, so that so then you wouldn't have woken up with that email or that note in your portal saying menopause. Now what, right? You would have been informed with all this.
I know. And it's funny. And I don't even blame the doctor, because I don't even know if the doctor had the information. Honestly, like I wouldn't even know. But I do know that because we're starting to have this conversation, I had this event in New Jersey at Loopwell, and this doctor stood up, and she's an OBGYN, and she said, I didn't know who you were. People kept coming into my office saying that they had a copy of this book or they watched your documentary. And I'm like, well, she's in New Jersey, so I'm going to go see her. And she said, and because of the women that have come in and the stories that they have told me about their personal, health journeys and what they didn't have and don't know, she goes, I'm turning my attention 100% to midlife women's health and focus on this. She goes,
my gosh, I love it.
So we're both crying, and I'm like, I didn't
love
know
it. I love it.
Unbelievable, because if we have more doctors like that really paying attention, then we can start moving the needle on the numbers of people that are getting help.
Absolutely. And it's funny you're saying that, though, because I think that I certify people to be nutrition and wellness coaches. And a big part of that community is midlife women, some of them who are already in this field and some of them who are career changers. But there are many of these women that come in saying, I am doing this because I'm so passionate about this topic, but I want to help other women. I've gone on this journey. I want to help other women. I want to be empowered with this knowledge. So, so it's funny, it's funny you're saying that with that doctor. I love that story. So, but back to hormone therapy for a moment. I do want to ask some specific questions because, again, you interviewed so many incredible doctors, and I think it's funny actually when I was reading, I was like, we go to the same OBGYN, the same functional gynecologist. It was so funny, who I adore as well. Anyway, okay, hormone therapy. People always ask, how long can I be on it? So I want to talk about that in a minute. I want to hear what you have to say and what you shared in the book. I thought was great.
Oh yeah. I mean, most doctors say the rest of your life, like that's not something you have to go off of. And so, I think
people are surprised to hear.
Yes, absolutely. Like I had a woman reach out to me and say, I was on it for 5 years. I went off of it because I wasn't having any more of those symptoms. But we're not talking about symptoms. We're talking about the long-term health benefits of that in your body. And so I know that there's been like so much confusion about it. There's been confusion of that 10-year window. Like if I went into menopause at the age of 50, if I'm 61, can I still start it up now? And so, that's going to be an individual by individual basis based on your current health, how you're doing, what you're dealing with. But those are the questions I want women to be able to ask. If they don't have to know the answer, they have to know the questions to be able to.
Yes.
And that's the most important part of this. Like my whole life was asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to be able to find from doctors, what do you need women to come in there with so you can treat them correctly, or to help them, or if they don't have a doctor like you, what do they need to know? So yes, that is the answer. Most doctors will tell you that they're on it forever and are going to stay on it. And I'm going to stay on it. I lost my mother to breast cancer, so I didn't think I was a candidate. We all had this fear dating back to this Women's Health Initiative, that this study that came out with headlines that were very scary, that screamed out estrogen was going to cause breast cancer. Several pieces of research and study have been released since. Nothing has walked back that fear, because once you have that fear and you hear that fear, I think it's very difficult to walk that back without just a major type of disruption or announcement. And so I didn't think I was available or able or candidate to do hormone therapy, and I am, and it was really life-changing for my brain, especially, like hopefully for my heart, but for my brain especially. I absolutely have my clarity back. I wouldn't have been able to have a conversation. I have my ability to retain things back. I couldn't do that. I was really having a tough time with my job. I was not 100% in with my job because I couldn't even focus. I couldn't remember things. I couldn't remember details. I couldn't read, what I needed to read to focus. And that was not anything I'd ever dealt with before.
Yeah. And it's hard. And it's also just a hard time in life in general. There's often like many other things going on. So I think that women also get confused. Like you said, like your doctor said to you, is it stress? And I think that a lot of times, like, and I know even like, because I have the word recall thing, that is a definite symptom for me. And sometimes I think I have just too many things going on. I mean, I have, 2 kids and job and life, and like, just, there's too many things going on, too many things in my brain. So is it that? Or is it perimenopause, or is it both?
But it could be both very well, right? Very possible. This time in life is there's a lot happening.
I know. I was just saying to a friend the other day, I said, this is just so unfair that I'm becoming an empty nester as I'm right in like the thick of perimenopause. I'm like, it's just cruel. I'm like, because what is it? My emotions are all out of whack. Anyway, so there's often a lot of things going on for many people. So you actually just touched on, you said, you gave the example of if someone's 61 and, they went into menopause, menopause happened at age 50, did they miss the boat? I actually got that exact question from someone. I asked people on in my Instagram that I was also, interviewing you, and I got this question: did I miss the boat on HT? I'm 58.
And when do we know when they went into menopause?
No, that was just a quick question. So did I miss the boat? I'm 58.
10 years is what the guidelines are, but I would talk to a doctor. Look, if you went into menopause at 48, that's very, you're right in that window. If you went into menopause at 40, that's a different conversation, which probably didn't happen because that's not quite so common.
Yeah. Right. And like you said, even if it was 11 years before, that doesn't mean it's a definite no.
Exactly.
And you definitely have to at least, be aware of that to go and ask those questions.
Exactly.
We kind of covered this already, but I did get this question as well. I have a family history of breast cancer. Can I definitely not be on hormone therapy? And as you mentioned, it's not a definite no at all.
No. And just to, I always want to say it out front. I'm not a doctor. This has all come from a lot of research and talking to a lot of doctors, interviewing a lot, looking through a lot of research, years of it, the documentaries, but I just always want to preface it. But, I'm somebody who has a family history of breast cancer, and I am a candidate for it and am on hormone therapy. Having a family risk of breast cancer is not a contraindication. So
yeah. And again, it's just even being informed, which I think you do a great job in the book also, of giving women the questions to ask. So at least they don't, because there are women that could go in and the doctor say, oh yeah, you have family history of breast cancer. You can't do this. Yeah. And that's the automatic. And then they just take that at their doctor's word, which again, like you, I don't blame some doctors. Some doctors just haven't don't have this information. But if you don't know to ask that question and push further, you don't know what you don't know. So
Well, and that's exactly right. And I also want women to not feel afraid to push further, because I think that
absolutely.
it can be intimidating. Look, when I sat down to write this book, I was like, on the top of my screen, I described myself like tired, brain fog,
Yep.
feeling awful, wanting to just go back to bed, wanting to crawl back into bed, gaining weight, like all the things that I was dealing with. And I said, so now right through that lens, because that was really important for me, that women didn't have this like deep things. So that's why I put scripts in there. That's why I put questions in there. That's why I put letters in there, all sorts of stuff. So you can go in and be like, hey, here's the symptoms, the 34 hallmark symptoms. I have 10 of these. Am I in perimenopause? What do I do? So yeah, we want to be able to ask the right questions.
Well, it's funny you said that you put that right in there, because so a friend of mine said to me the other day that she was, so I'm just on progesterone. So I'm only on that. I've not started estrogen, which I absolutely plan to. Don't need to dive deeper into that at the moment. And I do get my period consistently still, but I am not afraid to start it before that ends, which is another conversation. But my friend said to me the other day, oh, I'm just on estrogen, not progesterone. And I said, are you sure? I said, do you know what you're taking? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I said, because usually you can be on progesterone alone, but not estrogen alone. I said, and you have a uterus. I'm like, as far as I know, you do.
Recently too, which I was going to bring that up in a larger conversation, because there's a lot. That's what I worry about. Like there could be a reason for it that I'm not aware of.
Well, that's what I said. So she said this to me, and this was probably a few weeks ago. And I said, you should definitely follow, make sure, first of all, because, some people just don't even know necessarily what they're taking. Sometimes they're not that involved. Their doctor prescribes something, they take it, that's it. So I said, go check. I said, and then you should find out, because that sounds really odd to me that you would be on on estrogen. She goes, well, I think it's because I still make progesterone. I said, but you're still taking more estrogen. Yeah. And I said, go look at that. And so anyway, a couple weeks passed. And then when I was reading your book, preparing to talk with you, I underlined that exact a quote in the book. And I took a picture of it. I sent it to her and I said, this is exactly why I asked you about this. I said, take this to your doctor and just find out, because you are at a greater risk for cancer if you're taking estrogen without the progesterone. That sounds really odd to me. And I said, of course, I'm sure your doctor could be fabulous and totally in the know. And there's a very specific reason. Obviously, I don't know everything about your medical history. I said, but you have to know to ask the question. I just ask the question. Yeah, so who knows? There might be a reason, but if not, but I used the book as a little backup. Remember I asked you about this? She said, yeah. And I said, okay, here, I'm giving you a little info here, a little more to take with you.
I thank you for doing that, because that's really what I want. I wanted it to be, I wish it could be like a pocket guide, but there was just too much information. But I did want it to be a resource or a manual. We had that when we were like, what to expect when you're expecting. Everybody was like, here's the resource guide. So I really hope that that's what this is. And we continue, to update it, obviously, when we get more information and more research, that's solid research that we can do that with. It's funny. Somebody's like, how-to menopause. And I said, because we hadn't been taught how to do that. So that was really the thought behind it. And I just think that this is a time in life that we deserve to be taken care of and to be able to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So just a couple more on hormone therapy, and then everyone, you've got, there's so much we could cover here. But also I think something that people also are really confused about is bioidentical versus synthetic, and one being better than the other. And what I always say is, like, it's really individual. Like, what's going to work for, it's really what's going to work for you. The exact formula of progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, just progesterone, like your exact formula, the combo, which type, which form, oral, gel, cream, all of these things. Like, it's going to be very specific.
Factory, you know what I mean? So at the end of the day, that's what you have to know about that. And you also have to know that the hormone therapy that we're talking about now is not the hormone therapy we were talking about in 2002.
Exactly.
So, somebody came up to me the other day and she's like, I don't want to take horse urine. And I said, well, that's something that we were talking about in 2002, that, things are very, very different now. And so that's something else that we have to, make women aware of, that some of the misconceptions that we've had about this for the past 20, and it's not our fault. I keep going back to that. I was in the media. I should have known, every study that came out crossed my desk. The fact that I didn't know anything about this is still mind boggling to me. I'm like, how did I miss this? How did we all miss this?
Yeah.
So, bioidentical is what we have right now. And basically what all of us are being prescribed if you're taking a patch or you're taking a pill. And so that's what we're looking at. But at the end of the day, it's, how it's made.
Right. Exactly. And it's what's going to work for you. It wouldn't
And the
be,
type, yeah. And the
yeah.
type, whether it's a patch or a gel or a
Right.
cream or a compound, compound, I do go into a little bit because I think there's a little bit of confusion about that. And a lot of people really like testosterone pellets. A lot of doctors really don't recommend that, simply because you get this like big influx of testosterone and then now it kind of peters off and now you need another one versus having a steady amount of it, because we don't have, as women, FDA approved testosterone. So ours have to be compounded, or it needs to be a gel that you take like this little bit of, like I have a gel, a tube like this, and I have to go like, okay, just a little bit and rub it on my arm, which is absurd, but that's, that's what we have as women right now.
And I also think on that note, women are really confused about compounded pharmacies in general and think, oh no, I can't go. Some people are all about, oh, I only can go to compounded pharmacies. And then other people are like, I can't go to a compounded pharmacy. That's not FDA approved. And I say it's really about what's right for, you do want to go to obviously a reputable compounded pharmacy. You don't want to just buy something from someone off, but let's just assume that you're doing that. It's really about getting the formula that's right for you. And sometimes that formula, that really personalized formula that is right for you for the hormones that you need might be from you might only be able to get it from a compounded pharmacy. Absolutely. So don't be anti-compounded pharmacy. My progesterone is FDA approved, and I do get that from my regular pharmacy, and it's covered by insurance. But if it wasn't, and I needed to go through a compounded pharmacy, like if that's something I need, I would, have no worries about doing that. It can be a great solution.
No, I had to do that for progesterone for a little while because I was having breakthrough bleeding. And I needed to, because I have endometrium polyps and uterine polyps. So my doctor our doctor needed to regulate that. So I needed to be on 150 milligrams of progesterone, and the pills come in 100. So 200 was too much. I was like so exhausted and falling asleep all the time. And then 100 was not enough. So we went to 150, balanced everything out, retested, and now I'm back on the cheap ones that I don't have to pay more for.
So that actually brings up another really good point, though. It's also when you do figure this out and you go to the doctor and you do start hormone therapy, if it's right for you, it's not just one and done, get that prescription, that's it. It's ongoing, and you're probably going to have to tweak it. It might be, there's going to be some trial and error, what works for you. Then there's going to be some tweaking as you age, and and you can't just go and, take a blood test especially when you're in perimenopause and think you're going to have the exact answer, because that's changing. That's changing every day. That's also something I think people are oftentimes confused about. They think they can just go and get a blood test and find out what's going on. And it's like, that's really not going to do much at all. You really have to go to a doctor that can ask you all the right questions about your symptoms, and you can share all of the information about your symptoms, because that's going to, and with taking that into consideration with your lifestyle and your age, a doctor's going to be able to figure out what's right for you much more easily than just seeing your blood work, because we know that changes daily.
Well, yes, exactly. It does, especially in perimenopause, because your hormones are all over the place. So if you are listening to this and you want to, in the back of the book, there is a QR code and you can just scan it. And then I have a list of all the free resources. So there's a symptom tracker that you can follow. There's a guide that can kind of guide you through it. There's there's a whole bunch of other stuff there, but the symptom tracker is really good to have. So you can just be real basic. You can take it, check it off. Here's my 10 symptoms, bring it into the doctor, show it on your phone, and be able to go like, here's what I am. Here's what I want you to know early on. So it's a good idea to have something when you walk into the doctor's office. I have a guide there. You can show it on your phone. You can print it out, whatever you want to do. I'm old school print out sometimes. And, you at least have those symptoms. So you can say, look, I got these 7 things going on right now. Is it possible I'm in perimenopause? I'm 43 years old. I'm, having a hard time sleeping, skipping some periods, things are irregular. And then you can have the conversation like, what are my options now? Can I start hormone therapy? Is there something that I can do? What do you recommend? But honestly, after you read the book, you're going to know a lot of those things already. And I think it just puts people in a better place to feel like they can go in proactively with that conversation instead of like, hey doc, what's wrong? And then start playing whack-a-mole with all these different symptoms.
Yeah, I love it. Again, one of the reasons I think the book is so just valuable is because it's so useful.
Thank
It's
you.
so useful. Like there's so much good information to, again, empower women.
I'm
You
so
know
glad
what?
it was easy to read too.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I mean, that's like when I write and I'm talking about nutrition and I'm educating people in that area, I write, I think in a similar way where I want it to be really readable, usable, actionable, so that people can get the science, but they can, put it right into action. And
Yep.
so again,
Yep.
I love that.
Thank you.
So you have a whole chapter on sleep, which, as you
Yes.
know, sleep is a pillar of a nutritious life. So I've been talking
Yeah.
about sleep since I started my practice in 2002. I can't
Mhm.
believe it. Anyway, so I'm a big fan of sleep and how it impacts your health. Not just during this phase of life, but your entire life. And I always say
Yeah.
that sleep it's been rough for me my whole life. So at this stage of life, it's particularly rough. That is definitely a
Yeah.
big symptom for me. And I think there are various factors. There's, everything from your cortisol curve being thrown off to, I mean, there's all kinds of things
Mm.
impacting your sleep at this stage of life. But it was funny actually last night. So I came back from traveling last night. So I was a little thrown off, got in from a flight late, and 2:45, which is a little bit earlier than my normal wake up. Normally it's 3:30. I
Yeah.
was up and I was really up this time. And I said, oh goodness, that brain fog's going to be real tomorrow. And
Oh, yeah.
I'm interviewing Tamsen. And I was laughing. I'm like, well, at least she'll get it. At least she'll understand. So
Right. Right.
anyway, though, but sleep is so critical. And I love that you do go through that and you give such great tips on how to improve it. I've been talking about, again, sleep deep, your sleep hygiene, having your sleep routine, taking that as seriously as you take your morning routine, again, for years. But you give some really good tips for women in this stage of life. So aside from the things like, putting away your phone and winding down before bed and all of
Yeah.
that, can you just give us a couple of your favorite tips, like really specific to women that might be waking up with night sweats?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, and this came from Dr. Shelby Harris, which I didn't realize. She's like, get out of bed. Do not lay there and be dealing with the flip flop and turning over back and forth. If you can't fall asleep, if you can't get back to sleep in that 15 minutes, get up and move locations, get out of that room, and then try to go back after you're feeling a little bit tired again. Which I was like, what? Don't stay in bed. Don't do that. I don't even understand. The other thing that I did, my room stays very, very cool at night. I'm
Yeah.
always in layers. I mean, in like layers, like nothing on, like not, I'm sorry, not layers, sleeveless. And there's brain fog, sleeveless in little shorts. And I don't even care if it's 30 degrees out. Like that's how I dress to go to bed and then cover up when I feel that chill. If you're dealing with night sweats though, I mean, you do have to, that's one thing that I would say is an indicator of like paying attention to what's going on with your body. For me, progesterone has been a game changer when I sleep. Magnesium, I do every single night because I just have to. I did go around the room like a crazy person and duct tape every single light I could find. And even now I'm like, is that a light there? Like, is that a little shadow of a light? So my room is pitch black. I used to be like, I could sleep with the windows open. I can't do any of that anymore. The routine of like turning everything off. I do have a bedtime now and I do go to bed at the same time as best I can and get up at the same time, just to get in and out, even if I'm exhausted and didn't sleep. So even if I didn't sleep, I don't sleep until 10 o'clock in the morning. Once I fall back to sleep, I make myself still get up at that time. So I can reset that clock and have that process. So those are some of the more definitive things that I do.
I'm very, very similar to you. And like I said, I've been a terrible sleeper my whole life, but it got so much worse that is something that I've had to focus in on really closely. And it's funny, I have like this checklist of things I have to do: the progesterone, the magnesium, the blue light glasses, and I am so serious about it at night because I know if I don't do those things, It's like, forget it, nights out. And you know what? Last night, again, after travel, I didn't do my exact routine and I didn't sleep as
Yep.
well. So
Yep.
it's just like but it's kind of what I was saying before with things that's like doubling down. Like you've got to focus in on all the things you should always have been doing. But if you mess up just a little bit, I always say, I feel like I'm like on a tightrope. It's like
I
doing
know.
all of the things you have to do.
I
And
know.
if you don't do them, you're going to get thrown off. But if you do them and you do them consistently, you can feel amazing.
You
right?
can. And I always I never wanted to write a wellness book so people start feeling unwell when they read it, like, oh gosh, I'm not doing anything right. But even if you can start implementing a few of these things, it
Totally,
makes
absolutely.
such a difference. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And I wanted the book to be where you open it up and you're like, okay, I don't need to know about sex, but I
Right.
definitely need to know about movement, and so
Right,
that's the chapter you can read. So it doesn't have to be read like every single thing, but it was really important to hit, in the early part of it, the hormonal, non-hormonal, and then go into all these other chapters. So we have sleep, we have sex, we have mindset, we have stress, we have, we got all of it. We've got all of it. And I couldn't leave anything out. So
just a couple more questions for
yeah,
you.
no, I love it.
So and you do list these in the book, so you don't have to go into all of them, but I'm curious what your favorite supplements are for this stage of life. And again, I know this is you, and I know you're not, saying this from a doctor's perspective, but your personal experience, like what do you love?
Yeah. So I have a hard time with protein because I don't eat meat. And so, and I eat fish because I have to up my protein a little bit more, but I do a protein supplement every morning. Like I do a shake every morning. And we I don't know, I named it the Hot Girl Menopause Smoothie just to have fun.
Okay.
So I have a fun recipe for it in the book, actually. And that just kind of like gears up the protein every day. So at least I know I'm starting ahead, not behind, trying to fight that. And then I do magnesium at night for sure. And then I do vitamin D K2 because mine is very low. So actually, speaking of compounded, I had to have that compounded. About a year and a half ago. That's how low mine was. Wow. And so, so that's why I really did like kind of dig in with the book to write about that. And I'm out in the sun too. I was like, what? I need more sun, which I know is not even touching what I need, but I need to get that in there. And then, what else am I doing right now? I'm supplementing with collagen too. And
I love collagen.
Yeah, I do that one. I don't do that every day, honestly, but I do supplement with collagen and I'll just stick that in there as well, which kind of doubles things up in the morning.
Yeah, I think collagen is super important again, that's one that I would say too, even starting earlier,
any of those.
Yeah, starting earlier with that because it does makes a really big difference.
What about you? Are there any that you really love?
Yeah. So I would say I'm with you with the collagen, with the magnesium, with the vitamin D, although I don't have it compounded, but I do take vitamin D. Mine was low. Doesn't sound like it was low as yours was, but it was definitely low the last time I'd have it tested. So I did, I upped that recently. I take glutathione as a master antioxidant.
Sure.
I take electrolytes every day. I used to just take my electrolytes when I did hot yoga. Yeah. I just felt like I did it on those hot yoga days, but now I do them, every day.
What kind of electrolytes do you like? That's interesting.
I take Relight. I like Relight.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, what did you just ask about?
I was doing fiber, but I'm feeling like once I got my sleep and my workout routine and like a lot of things in order, I feel like that's going okay. So I'm not adding that right now. I'm more focused on the protein part.
Yeah. And for me, I eat so many fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds. Like I feel really good about the amount of fiber I get. And I have like really regular bowel movements for everyone that wants to know. My gut health feels pretty good. Right. But on that note, I do take a probiotic regularly as well. So I do take my probiotic. And I also take, I just had cataract surgery actually in both my eyes. So I'm really focused on my eye health. So I do take lutein, zeaxanthin. I know it sounds like I definitely take a lot of things here. And I also take Fatty 15, which is the C15 supplement. And I also take, there was one other thing I was going to mention. Oh, I take creatine, but I take creatine HCl. There is, so much research on creatine, and I think it's so important for, obviously to reduce sarcopenia and to maintain our muscle mass, but also I take it more for the brain health benefits. So I'm really, again, like I said, I'm focused on the brain health benefits. I take it for that. Creatine monohydrate did definitely puff me up a little,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
did not love. Some women have that problem, some don't.
Mhm.
Most women can get through that and it's fine. For me, I did not love the way I felt. So I've been
No.
using creatine HCl, which I have found to be really
Yeah,
beneficial.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
we went through a lot of them in the book, and I did them all just because I get so many questions about supplements. I
Yeah.
don't take all of those, so I
Yeah.
listed the ones that I was taking at the time.
Right.
But I do want women to know there are options out there, and I think that
Yeah.
that's really important. When we did the documentary, we realized that there was so much confusion around that, and
Yeah.
what was okay, what was not okay. So we just wanted to make sure and try to.
Absolutely. And like everything else, it's going to be someone's, specific formula. And also like also one thing I always like to remind people too, especially when I'm listing like what, you just asked me like what I'm doing and I listed that out. I also like to remind people nothing replaces getting fresh air, doing your exercise, being properly hydrated, eating your whole real foods, getting in your protein, getting in your fruits and vegetables to get in those antioxidants and that fiber, getting your adequate sleep. Nothing is going to replace that.
Yeah,
These things that I'm talking about, that
100%.
I'm doing, it's to take things up a notch. But if
Mhm.
you're not doing any of those things, don't think, oh, I have to go and add all these things in. Not at all.
This
You
is a
might need
bad
none of that.
time.
This
Yeah,
is really to up level things when you've kind of already nailed some of the basics. And even when you nail the basics, it doesn't mean you're going to need all of those things. I love doing this. I'm in a good routine with it. They make me feel good, but I also take breaks from supplements sometimes. Like when I go on vacation, I generally don't bring any of it because I'm
yep,
like, you know what? I'm going to give my body a full break from this.
yep.
And then some, and then I'd say I look at what I'm doing every 6 months and I tweak it. So
No,
I just like people to also know you don't have to go that route with the supplements. I just want to make sure that, and obviously always, especially if you're on any medications, definitely talk to your healthcare practitioner
yeah,
about them before starting any.
yep,
So
yep.
anyway,
I love that.
okay.
So, so right.
So what, you're such an incredible advocate in this space. You're really, doing so much good work for so many women out there. What do you want to see happen in this world of menopause, in this world, this midlife women, stage? Like what would you love to see 5 years from now? Like what would be a
Yeah,
great win for you?
I think I'd love to see women really understand the basics of it all so they don't feel so confused. I was at a documentary screening on Tuesday night because I do that anytime anytime I can go to one of them. And a woman stood up and she said, I feel like I'm in the dark right now and I'm outside of conversations that I'm having with people, just kind of watching it all happen in my life.
Mm,
And it just makes me so sad because I think there's just a lot of people that are really suffering during this time. So, it would be very encouraging for me to see the education really change in medical schools to like next level that to make sure that other disciplines are aware of these symptoms of menopause. And I think that's starting to happen to make sure that workplaces have policy in there that
yes.
women can
Yes.
access. And, those are the big areas. I think that advocacy is important, but we have to now stop talking about it and start implementing. That's what I think.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, very last question for you. What do you do on a daily basis to ignite your nutritious life?
Ah,
And I know there's lots of things you do. Your hot, what is it? Your hot girl menopause smoothie?
I have a menopause smoothie. I do that. I walk every morning for about an hour and a half
Oh,
to 2 hours. So that's how
oh,
I start.
amazing.
So then I come home and I have my smoothie. And then, I make sure of a couple of different things. My water intake, I try to like really pay attention to. And I'm always like, I like fruits and vegetables a ton. So that part's easy for me. I enjoy that. I think I'm just working on the protein part, but I try to ignite it with like fun dishes that combining stuff that doesn't necessarily always go together, but just so I can get a little bit of everything. So I'm like, oh, pumpkin seeds can go in here and this can go in here and that can go in here. So I'm always throwing like extra stuff. So I don't make any traditional kind of salads. Like everything I do is what it's doing for my body. And I feel good about that. So I try to
Ah,
do at least one of those meals a day.
I love that. And that is what we call eating empowered at
Yes.
Nutritious Life. I love that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
feels
Well,
good.
thank you so, so much for chatting with me today. I know our listeners got so much out of this
Oh,
conversation, but there's so much more to learn. And definitely in the show notes, check out the link to How-to Menopause so you can grab your own copy if you don't have that yet. And then also, we're going to put a link to the documentary that Tamsen produced called the M Factor.
Yeah.
And yeah, super excited. I went to a screening of that, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah,
you did? Oh, I'm
I
so
was at a
glad.
screening of that. Yeah. I know, because I didn't see you or talk to you that night, but I did. It was a couple months later when I did see you and run into you. But I did go to one of the screenings. Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
was
I'm
great.
so
So everyone
glad.
should check that out too. Anyway, thank you again so much for being
Thank
here.
you for everything you do for everybody. I mean, seriously, I love how you distill information and make it easy to understand and not feel intimidating. That's a big deal.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a big deal.